Hi, Franklin friends. Miss Kennedy here, back for another chapter of our book, The Cricket in Times Square by George Selden. When I left off last time, I forgot to show you one of the pictures at the very end of that chapter, and it was a picture of Tucker inside the pagoda. I thought maybe you'd like to see it. This is where we left. This is where we left off with Tucker inside the pagoda. He has $2 bill, one on top of him and one underneath him, and a old earring of Mama Bellini's that has some sparkly stones on it. This is where our story continues. And in this one, we are now in chapter 8. And this one's called Tucker's Life Savings. Chester Cricket was having a dream. In his dream, he was sitting on top of his stump back in Connecticut, eating a leaf from a willow tree. He would bite off a piece of leaf and chew it up and swallow it, but for some reason it didn't taste very good as usual. There was something dry and papery about it, and it had a bitter flavor. Still, Chester kept eating, hoping that it would begin to taste better soon. A storm came into his dream. The wind blew clouds of dust across the meadow. They swirled around his stump, and Chester began to sneeze because the dust got in his nose. But he still held on to the leaf. And then he sneezed just a big sneeze that it woke him up. Chester looked around him. He had been walking in his sleep, and he was sitting on the edge of the cash register. The storm had been a gust of air that blew into the newsstand when the shuttle pulled up to the station. He was still choking from the dirt that flew around him. Chester looked down at his two front legs, half expecting to find the willow leaf. But it was no leaf he was holding. It was a $2 bill, and he had already eaten half of it. He dropped the bill and leaped over to the cricket cage, where Tucker Mouse was sleeping very peacefully. Chester shook the silver bell furiously. It rang like a fire alarm. Tucker jumped up from under his blanket of dollar bills and ran around the cage, shouting, "Help! Fire! Murder! Police! Help!" Then he realized where he was and he sat down, panting. "Oh, what, what's the matter with you, Chester?" he said. "I could have died from fright." "I just ate half of a $2 bill," said Chester. Tucker stared at him with disbelief. "You did what?" he asked. "Yes," said Chester. "Look." He fetched the ruined $2 bill from the cash register. "I dreamt it was a leaf and I ate it." "Oh, moaned Tucker Mouse. "Not a $1 bill, not even a $1 bill and a 50-cent piece. A $2 bill you had to eat. From the Bellinis, too. People who can hardly make $2 in 2 days." "What am I going to do?" asked Chester. "I'd pack my bags and move to California," said Tucker. Chester shook his head. "I can't," he said. "They've been so good to me. I can't just run away." Tucker Mouse shrugged his shoulders. Well, stay and take the rap," he said. He crept out of the cage and examined the remains of the money. "There's still half of it left. Maybe we could put some Scotch tape along the edge and pass it off as a $1 bill." "No one would believe that," said Chester. He sat down, still forlornly holding the bill. Oh dear, and things were going so nicely. Tucker put his bedclothes back into the cash register drawer and came to sit by his friend Chester. "Buck up," he said. "We could still figure something out, maybe." They both concentrated for a minute, and then Tucker clapped his paws and squeaked, "Ah, I've got it! Eat the rest of it, and they'll never know what happened." "But they'll accuse each other of losing it," said Chester. "I don't want there to be any bad feelings between them." "Oh, you're just too honorable," said Tucker. "It's disgusting." "Besides, it tastes bad," said Chester. "Then how about this?" said Tucker. He had a new idea. "We frame the janitor who cleans the station. I'll take the evidence over and plant it in his water closet. He whopped me with a mop last week. I would be glad to see him go to jail for a few days." "No, no, no," said Chester. "We can't get somebody else in trouble." "Then a stranger," said. "We tip over the Kleenex and break the glass on the alarm clock and throw some of the small change onto the floor. They'll think a thief came in the night. You might even get a bandage on and make it look like you're a hero. I could see it all." "No," Chester interrupted. "The damage we do would cost even more than the $2." Tucker had no more ideas. He was going to volunteer to go over and swipe and take a $2 bill from the lunch counter, but before he could even suggest that idea, the top of the stand was suddenly lifted off. They had forgotten that what time it was. Mama Bellini, who was on duty in the morning, stood towering over them, frowning. Tucker let out a squeak of fear and jumped to the floor. "Catch that! Catch the mouse!" she shouted as she picked up a Fortune magazine, a very big and heavy one, and heaved it at Tucker. It hit him in the left hind leg just as he vanished into the drain pipe. Chester Cricket sat frozen in the spot. He was caught red-handed, holding the chewed-up $2 bill in his front legs. Muttering with rage, Mama Bellini picked him up by his antennas and just tossed him into the cricket cage and locked the gate behind him. When she had put the newsstand in order, she pulled out her knitting and began to work furiously. But she was so angry she kept dropping stitches, and that made her angrier still. Chester crouched in a far corner of the cage. Things had been going so well between Mamma and him, but that was all ruined now. He half expected that she would pick him up, cage and all, and throw him into the shuttle tracks. At 8:30, Mario and Papa arrived. Mario wanted to go to Coney Island for the swim today, but before he could even say good morning, Mamma Bellini stretched out her hand and pointed sternly at Chester. There he was, with the evidence beside him. A three-cornered conversation began, and Mamma denounced Chester as a money-eater, and said further that she suspected that he was inviting mice and other unsavory characters into the newsstand at night. Papa said he didn't think Chester had eaten the $2 bill on purpose. And what difference did it make if the mouse or two came in? Mamma said he had to go. Papa said he could stay, but he'd have to be kept inside the cage. And Mario knew that Chester, like all people who are used to freedom, would rather die than live his whole life behind bars. Finally, it was decided that since the cricket was Mario's pet, the boy would have to replace the money. And when he had, Chester could come out again. Until then, he was in the cage. By working part-time delivering groceries when he wasn't taking care of the newsstand, Mario thought he could earn enough in a couple of weeks to get Chester out of jail. Of course, that would mean no swimming at Coney Island and no movies or no nothing, but it was worth it. He fed the cricket his breakfast, leftover asparagus tips, a piece of cabbage leaf. Chester had practically no appetite after what had happened. Then, when the cricket was finished, Mario said goodbye and told him not to worry, and off to the grocery store to see about a job. That night, after Papa had shut up the newsstand, Chester was hanging through the gilded bars of his cage. Earlier in the evening, Mari had come back to feed him his supper, but then he had to leave right away to get in a few more hours of work. Most of the day, Chester had spent inventing hopping games to try to keep himself entertained, but they didn't work, really. He was bored and lonely. The funny thing was that although he had been sleepy and kept wishing it were nighttime, now that it was, he couldn't fall asleep. Chester heard the soft padding of feet beneath him. Harry Cat sprung up and landed on the shelf in a moment. Tucker Mouse followed him from the stool, groaning with pain. He was still limping in his left hind leg where the Fortune magazine had hit him. "How long is the sentence?" asked Harry. "Until Mario can pay back the money," said Chester. "Couldn't you get out of jail for the time being?" asked Tucker. "No," said Chester. "And anyway, nobody has any bail. I'm surprised they let me off that easy." Harry Cat folded his paws in front of each other and rested his head. Let me get this straight, he said. Does Mario have to work for the money as a punishment, or does he just have to get it somewhere? He just has to get it, said Chester. Why should he be punished? I'm the one who ate the money. Harry looked at Tucker, a long look, as if he expected the mouse to say something. Tucker began to fidget. Chester, you want to escape? He said. We could open the cage and you could come and live in the drain pipe. No, said Chester, shaking his head. I wouldn't be fair to Mario. I'll just have to serve out my time. Harry looked at Tucker again and began tapping one of his paws. Well, he said finally. Tucker moaned and massaged his sore spot. Oh, my poor leg. That Mama Bellini can sure heave a magazine. Feel the lump, Harry, he offered. I felt it already, said Harry. Now enough of your stalling. You have money. Tucker has money? Said Chester Cricket. Tucker looked nervously from one to the other. I have my life savings, he said in a pathetic voice. He's the richest mouse in New York, said Harry. Old Moneybags Mouse, he's known as. Now, just wait a minute, Harry, said Tucker. Let's not make too much from a few nickels and dimes. How did you get money? Asked Chester. Tucker Mouth cleared his throat and began wringing his two front feet. When he spoke, his voice was all choked up with emotion. Years ago, when yet a little mouse I was, tender in age and lacking in experience, I moved from the sweet scenes of my childhood, 10th Avenue, that is, to the Times Square subway station. And it was here that I learned the value of economics, which means saving. Many an old mouse did I see, crawling away unwanted to a poor mouse's grave, because he had not saved, and I resolved that such a fate would never come to me. All of which means that you have got a pile of loot back there in the drain pipe, said Harry Cat. Now, just a minute, if you don't mind, said Tucker. I will tell it my own way. His voice became high and pitiful again. So, for all the long years of my youth, when I could have been gambling, which means playing, and with other mousies, I saved. I saved paper. I saved food. I saved clothing. Save time and get to the point, said Harry Cat. Tucker gave Harry a sour smile. And I also saved money, he went on. In the course of my many years of scrounging, it was only natural I should find a certain amount of loose change. Often, oh, often, my friends, Tucker put his hand over his heart, would I sit in the opening of my drain pipe, watching the human beings and waiting. And whenever one of them dropped a coin, oh, however small, oh, pennies, oh, I love pennies, I would dash out at the great peril of my life and limb and bring it back to my house. Ah, when I think of the trampled shoes and the dangerous galoshes, many times I have had my toes stepped on and my whiskers torn off because of these labors. But it was worth it. Oh, it was worth it, my friend. On account of now I have $2 half, 5 quarters, 2 dimes, 6 nickels, and 18 pennies tucked away in the drain pipe, which makes $2.93, says Harry Cat, after doing some quick addition. And proud I am of it, said Tucker. And if you've got all of that, why did you want to sleep in the $2 bills in the cricket cage? Said Chester. Oh, no folding money yet, said Tucker. It was a new sensation. You can get out Chester and still have you can get Chester out and still have 93 cents left, said Harry Cat. But I'll be ruined, whispered Tucker Mouse. I'll be wiped out. Who will take care of me in my old age? I will, said Harry Cat. Now stop acting like a skinflint. Let's get the money. Chester rang the bell to get their attention. I don't think Tucker should have to give up his life savings, he said. It's his money and he can do with it what he wants. Tucker Mouse poked Harry in the ribs. Ah, listen to the cricket, he said, acting noble and making me look like a bum. Of course I'll give the money. Wherever mice are spoken of, never let it be said that Tucker Mouse was stingy with his worldly goods, because I could think of it as rent I paid for sleeping in the cage. In order that Tucker could keep at least one of each kind of coin, Harry figured out that they should bring over $1 bill, one half-dollar, 4 quarters, one dime, 5 nickels, 15 cents. That would leave the mouse with a half-dollar, a quarter, a dime, a nickel, and 3 cents. It's not a bad beginning, said Tucker. I could make it up in the losses in a year, maybe. The cat and mouse had to make several trips back and forth between the drain pipe and the newsstand, carrying the money in their mouths. They passed the coins into the cage one by one, and Chester built them up into a column, starting with the half-dollar at the bottom and ending with the dime at the top, which is the smallest. It was morning by the time they were finished. They had just enough time to share half a hot dog before Mamma Bellini was due to open up the stand. Mario came with her. He wanted to feed Chester early and then work all morning until he took over the newsstand at noon. When they lifted off the cover, Mamma almost dropped her end of it. There was Chester, sitting on top of the column of change, chirping merrily. Mamma's first suspicion was that the cricket had sneaked out and smuggled all the money from the cash register into the cage. But when she looked into the drawer, the money from the night before was still there. Mario had the idea that Papa might have left the money as a surprise. Mamma shook her head. She would certainly have known if he had had $2 to leave anybody. They asked Paul, the conductor, if he'd seen anyone around the newsstand. He said no. The only thing he had noticed was that big cat who sometimes prowled around the station had seemed to be busier than usual that night. And of course, they knew that he couldn't have had anything to do with replacing the money. But whoever left it, Mamma Bellini was true to her word. Chester was allowed out of the cage, and no further questions were asked. Although she wouldn't have admitted it for the world, Mamma felt the same way about money that Tucker Mouse did. When you have it, you had it, and you didn't bother too much about where it came from. That's the end of our chapter. We have, I'm checking here, 2 pictures. The first one is Chester ringing the bell to get Tucker's attention. See if I can get that. Oops, sorry, friends. We'll try again here. There we go. There's a good picture of the pagoda and Tucker getting so scared as he's running out of the cricket cage. The next picture is a picture of Mario and Mama opening up the newsstand and being shocked to see the money inside. That's the end of that chapter. Until next time, bye for now.